Last time I was talking about all the times I've had people pleaser syndrome, which is pretty much all the time, it seems. And I know there are others out there with the same challenge. There are actually probably many things we can unpack to work on from that story and that scenario. But let's just start here, shall we? You guys ready to talk about it and learn some tools to help your people pleaser syndrome? Let's get into it. Welcome back to Soulful Wonderings, a space to explore life's lessons, heal through reflection, and remember we're never alone on our journey. I'm Heather, and I'm a people pleaser and a rock the boater. Today we're diving into something that many of us struggle with, and that is pursuing our dreams while staying true to ourselves and doing it in a way that doesn't feel like we're rocking the boat with the people we love. It's a delicate balance at times, don't you think? And if you're like me, you want to honor those relationships, especially to those you're really close to and those that are kind of in your innermost circle. But at the same time, I want to honor my own path. And I know most of my life, my path has basically taken a back seat to pleasing others. So, what are some ways to approach this where you stay grounded but still move forward toward the life that you really want? I think we start off by understanding our desire to people please. I think many of us have done it, haven't we? We've found ourselves making decisions based on the expectations of others, and it's often in almost every aspect of our lives. Am I right? Career choices, personal goals, or even just day to day interactions. I talked about that last episode, how it came down to my college career, the school I went to, the major I chose. And you guys don't know how heavy that can feel. It's like you're carrying a load that wasn't meant for you. The truth is, I think most of us pick up this habit early, often as children. We're coming from a well-meaning place, like wanting to keep the peace or avoid conflict. I talked about that a lot before. But here's the thing, when you ignore your own needs, it starts to chip away at your sense of self. And I think you can easily confuse what you want with pleasing others, or lose sight of what you want just to avoid a conflict. How many of us have done that? Show of hands. Yep, my hands up high. Yeah. So I think a great tool in this situation is self-reflection. So basically you want to pause and when you ask yourself things like, what do I really want? How do I feel when I imagine pursuing this path or this goal or this dream? Because let me tell you, it's easy to get distracted by all the other voices, right? Especially when there are many voices and you feel kind of pulled in all directions by so many people. Everyone's saying the same thing, but in your gut, you're going, but that doesn't feel right. That's not how I feel. I think that's when it's important to kind of tune back into your own inner compass. Make sure what you're following is yours and not theirs. If it doesn't feel right in your gut, get to the bottom of why. Is it guilt? Or is it because your heart actually wants a different path? Are the beliefs and the goals you're fighting for, are they truly yours? Or is that the expectation of someone else, right? Because sometimes the pressure to conform can be so strong that we end up fighting for something that really just doesn't truly align with our desires at all. So if you take a step back and ask yourself, have I explored this belief or decision deeply? Do I know why I want this for myself? Do I know why? Or is it because I'm trying to meet someone else's expectations? I think it's crucial that you take the time to reflect on whether what you're fighting for, is it in alignment with who you truly are? Now, the more you dig into this, the more confidence you'll have in kind of defending that path. All right. So when you start to set boundaries or you start to make big decisions, you'll know that you can stand firm in those choices. You can defend them, for lack of a better word. It kind of carries more weight, and not just with words, but with this deep, unshakable understanding that this path is mine. I own this path because you've already done the work to make sure that it is. And then when someone starts trying to poke holes in your ideas, you know what I'm talking about, then you can answer. And they tend to kind of back off because I think they start to understand that your decision has weight, that basically it has merit. You didn't come to it. What do they say? You didn't come to it all willy-nilly. You put thought behind it. It has legs to stand on. Does that make sense? So one way you can reflect and kind of dive into this is by journaling. Journal on those questions that we brought up. And I know that sounds really simple on the surface, but when you get quiet with yourself and you kind of let those thoughts start to pour out, it can be really powerful. And I promise you, you will start to see the real answers coming out when you start journaling your inner thoughts. And now, as you feel like you know what it is that you really want, then it's time to take action. You can start small, make tiny aligned actions that push you towards your dream. Even if it's just a few minutes a day of working on something that you love. These small actions, what they do is they build momentum. They move the needle just a little bit, and they help you build trust with yourself. Because that's what it all boils down to, right? Trusting yourself to follow through, even when it feels uncomfortable. And often that's exactly what will happen. Because now, let's talk about setting boundaries without feeling like you're going to start a war. You know what I'm talking about, right? Because boundaries can be awkward. They can be uncomfortable. Because often with the other people that you're setting the boundary with, it's unexpected. And look, boundaries don't have to be harsh or dramatic. You don't have to be ugly about it, right? Boundaries can actually be a sort of soft redirection, a kind request for space so that you can explore your own desires. Okay, for example, instead of saying, I can't do this, try something like, I'm exploring a different direction right now, and I would love your support in that. It's gentle but clear, and it opens up a dialogue, right? Instead of creating tension. Maybe from there they ask a question. Well, what direction are you trying to take? And then you can explain it. Now, sometimes boundaries have to be a little more firm. This is true. And I'm saying firm because I think that's a good non-confrontational word. But I believe that part of that is holding the boundary, kind of more than the boundary itself. This is often where the biggest part of the challenge is you've set the boundary. Now you have to hold it, and that's where sometimes it gets firm. So a great way to give your decision legs is with I statements. For example, instead of saying, you always think I should do this, say, I've realized I want to pursue this, and here's why it matters to me. It keeps the focus on you, on your feelings, on your needs, and it doesn't cast blame on anyone else. Now you're communicating, you're doing it with love, and you're owning that decision. Now, of course, one of the big fears we often face in these situations is that setting that boundary or pursuing our dreams is going to create conflict, right? We've talked about this. What if it pushes people away? What if it ruins a relationship? Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But here's something important to remember. If those relationships are truly meant to last, they'll adapt. If these people are important in your life and they're meant to stay in your life, they will adapt. They may not agree. In fact, yes, it's possible that they may be disappointed. But hear me, disappointment isn't the same as rejection, okay? Everything in a relationship won't always be perfect. There'll be disagreements, and you won't always believe exactly the same way. But if you communicate your needs clearly and with compassion, and I believe with kindness, you create this space that is open for growth for yourself and for the people around you. Another great approach that can really be helpful is acknowledging the other person's feelings. Okay, so you can say something like, I understand this may be hard for you to hear, and I really value what you've shared with me, but this is a path I need to explore for my own growth. It lets them know you're aware of their emotions. I hate to say validates because I'm not sure that that's exactly appropriate, but it acknowledges it, right? It acknowledges their emotions, and I think they may feel validated that, okay, you heard them. And often that's what people need, right? They just need to know that you at least heard them. They've stated their piece, kind of, and now they can, say, okay, go ahead, because okay, at least I stated my piece. I stated what I was concerned about, and that may kind of soften the impact of the choice you've made. So if you're struggling with finding the courage to pursue your dreams while navigating relationships, remember this: it's not about choosing one over the other. You don't have to do that. It's about finding a way to honor both. Honor your desires and the people you love. And I believe it starts with small, gentle steps and being kind to yourself along the way. And look, I promise you'll begin to see the magic unfold as you do that. So I want to thank you for listening to today's episode of Soulful Wonderings. If this episode spoke to you, I would love if you would share it with your friends. I would also love to hear your stories on how you've set boundaries and found ways to pursue your dreams. You can feel free to share those on our social pages. We would love to see them. And I hope you take this with you today, and that's to remember you are not alone on this journey. Others are going through the same thing, I promise. And there is a whole community here to support and love you. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of your dreams.